Hey, let's be honest. Most of us like to have things figured out. Whether it's planning our week, running a business, or just trying to navigate life, we cling to frameworks, strategies, and advice that are foolproof roadmaps for success. I did. So for years, I learned on models and systems, hoping they'd run everything smoothly. And guess what? They didn't. That's not to say models don't work. They do sometimes. But here's the thing nobody tells you up front. All models are wrong. Yeah. Every single one of them. Some are useful, sure, but none can perfectly capture the messy, unpredictable nature of reality. And the sooner we embrace that, the better you'll be. So let's kind of dive into this idea. Let's chat about what it really means and figure out how to make peace with imperfection. My love-hate relationship with models. I've always been like a systems guy. Give me a checklist, a strategy, or framework, and I'm in heaven. There's just something comforting about having a step-by-step guide that promises results. It makes me feel like I have control, and I feel like I can predict the outcome of whatever I'm working on. But life doesn't always follow those rules, and that's where my love for models has somewhat turned into like a frustration. I remember the first time I put all my faith into a model. Fresh out of college, I found a productivity system that claimed to guarantee success if I followed these steps. It was like a revelation. I thought, finally, this is going to fix everything. And guess what? It didn't. Deadlines shifted, priorities changed, and challenges popped up as they always do. The system didn't account for any of that. Instead of questioning the model, I blamed myself, assuming I'd done something wrong. This cycle repeated itself more times than I'd like to admit, and each time I met it with the realization, the model could only take me so far. When I was starting Blakebill.com, I followed expert advice to the letter. One popular model suggested focusing on a single niche, so I tailored the platform exclusively for graphic designers. It seemed logical, but it wasn't something that was really adding up for me. While graphic designers were signing up, so were writers, so were videographers, and just so were general freelancers. The narrow focus was actually holding me back. That's when I realized I was forcing my business into a framework that didn't fit. The model wasn't broken, but it wasn't right for me. The platform required flexibility and adaptability, not rigid adherence to a one-size-fits-all strategy. That experience taught me to see these models for what they are: tools, not rules. They're helpful starting points, but they can't guarantee success. Now, I ask myself, does this actually make sense for me? The most effective strategies are the ones I've tweaked or even completely overhauled to fit my unique situation. While I still use models to help me get started, I approach them with skepticism. Life is messy, unpredictable, and full of exception. No model can capture that one complexity. And you know what? That's okay. Models don't have to be perfect. They're just stepping stones. What does all models wrong even mean? The phrase, all models are wrong, but some are useful, comes from the statistician George Box. At first, it sounds contradictory. If the model is wrong, why use it? But the truth is, models aren't designed to be perfect. They're simplified versions of reality that are meant to help us understand it. Think of a model like a map. A map doesn't show every detail of the terrain. It highlights only the essentials, the roads, the landmarks, and the distances. While it's not an exact representation of reality, it's still useful for getting from point A to point B. But maps also have limits. They won't account for closed roads, they won't account for detours or unexpected changes, and that's where their shortcomings become clear. The same applies to models in life, work, or business. They're built on assumptions and designed for specific contexts. Outside of those contexts, they can fall apart. For example, the food pyramid. Many of us learned in school that it was a well-intentioned guide, but over time we realized it oversimplified healthy eating and wasn't entirely accurate. What makes a model wrong isn't that it fails completely, but that it can't capture the full complexity of reality. Life is messy, unpredictable, and nuanced, and no framework can account for everything. However, a model becomes useful when it helps us make progress or navigate a challenge, even if it's not perfect. The key is not to cling too tightly to a model or treat it as gospel. When you rely on a framework too much, you risk ignoring its limitations and making decisions that don't fit your situation. It's like blindly following the GPS into a dead end because you can't account for real-world conditions. This perspective helped me immensely when I was started with Blakebill. At first I tried to follow this business framework that had emphasized targeting a single audience. While the model worked for some businesses, it didn't fit mine. My users came from various industries, and narrowing my focus limited the platform's potential. Once I adjusted the model to suit my needs, everything started to fall into place. All models are wrong doesn't mean you should abandon them altogether. Instead, it's a reminder to use them as tools, not rules. They're there to guide you, but you should adapt, question, and evolve as needed. The value of a model lies within how you move forward, even when it's not perfect. Why we rely on models. Life is unpredictable, overwhelming, and often chaotic. We're constantly faced with choices, problems to solve, and paths to take, all while trying to make sense of the complexity around us. That's where models comes in. They're tools we use to simplify the messiness of life. They provide a framework, a way to organize our thoughts, and a method for making decisions without constantly reinventing the wheel. At their core, models offer clarity. When we're overwhelmed, having a structure to lean on can feel like a lifeline. Instead of being paralyzed by endless options, a model gives us a starting point. It's a guide, something to hold on to when we're not sure what to do next. It saves us from overthinking and helps us take action, even when the path feels uncertain. Another reason we rely on models is that they save us time and energy. Imagine trying to solve every problem from scratch without a framework to build on. Every decision would require an exhaustive analysis of every variable. Models eliminate that burden. They distill complexity into manageable pieces, letting us focus on the tasks at hand rather than getting lost in the details. Take a simple to-do list, for example. It's one of the most basic models, but it works because it gives us a way to organize our day without overcomplicating things. You don't have to spend time figuring out how to remember everything. You just have to write it down and follow a list. That simplicity frees up mental bandwidth for more important decisions. Models also provide a sense of control in a world where so much is unpredictable. Following a proven framework can feel less like a safe bet. It's comforting to think that if we stick to these steps, we'll get the results we're looking for. Whether it's a business strategy, a fitness plan, or a personal growth framework, models promise order in a world that often feels chaotic. Beyond that, models connect us to a collective wisdom. Most frameworks are built on the experiences of others, which means that by adopting a model, we're tapping into the knowledge and insights of people who have faced similar challenges. It's like having a mentor in your pocket. This shared understanding can be incredibly reassuring, especially when we're tackling something new or intimidating. Perhaps the most valuable thing about models is that they help us get started. Sometimes the hardest part of solving a problem or chasing a goal is taking the first step. Models remove that initial hurdle by giving us a plan, even if it's not perfect. Once we're in motion, we can adjust, refine, and adapt to what's needed. In the end, we rely on models because they make the world feel a little less overwhelming. They provide clarity, save time, and offer a sense of direction. While they're not flawless, they're tools that help us navigate life's complexities with a little more confidence and ease. The danger of over-reliance. Models are powerful tools, but leaning too heavily on them can create significant problems. At their core, models are simplifications designed to make complex ideas more manageable. While this makes them useful, it also makes them incomplete. While we over-rely on a model, we risk losing sight of the bigger picture, becoming rigid in our thinking and failing to adapt to life's unpredictable realities. One major issue with over-reliance is that it stifles critical thinking. Models often come with the promise of being a proven method, leading us to trust them without ever questioning whether they truly fit our situation. When we blindly follow a framework, we stop analyzing its relevance and overlook opportunities to adapt or improve. This can result in applying a model to a situation it wasn't designed for, with disappointing results. Another danger lies in ignoring context and nuance. Models are typically built around specific assumptions, but in real life rarely match those conditions perfectly. A model that thrives in one scenario might completely fail in another. For instance, productivity systems that work well in corporate settings might not be effective for someone managing freelance work or family obligations. Over-relying on the model can lead to forcing ill-suited solutions into unique challenges. Again, my experiences with Blakebill, I encountered this firsthand. I followed a very popular framework that emphasized focusing on the single niche, believing it would drive success, but my platform attracted the broader range of freelancers, graphic designers, writers, and more. Narrowing my focus to fit the framework alienated my users, and it wasn't until I adapted the model to align with my audience that the platform actually started to grow. Over-reliance also creates a sense of being rigid. Models often come with a fixed set of rules, and when we cling to them, we lose the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Life and markets evolve, and what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. Businesses or individuals who stick to outdated strategies often find themselves falling behind, unable to pivot when needed. Finally, over-reliance fosters a false sense of certainty. Many models come packaged with success stories that make them seem foolproof, leading us to believe that following the steps guarantees results. When those results don't materialize, it can lead to frustration and self-doubt. Models don't account for the unique factors in every situation, and expecting guaranteed success from them sets us up for disappointment. The key to avoid these pitfalls is to treat models as flexible tools, not rigid solutions. The most effective when they inspire action and provide direction, but they must remain adaptable. By recognizing their limitations and staying open to change, we can avoid the dangers of over-reliance and use these models to help us move forward without becoming trapped by them. Embracing the flaws. The idea that all models are wrong can feel unsettling at first, but it's actually freeing. Recognizing the flaws in a model isn't about rejecting structure. It's about understanding that no framework is perfect and using it as a flexible guide rather than a rigid rule. Once you accept this, you stop chasing perfection and you start leveraging models for what they truly are, tools to help you move forward, not guarantees of success. Models, like everything created by humans, come with bias and limitations. They're lenses that offer that one way of understanding the world, but they're never the entire picture. Embracing these flaws allows you to adapt a model to fit your unique situation rather than forcing yourself to conform to it. Think of a model like a recipe. The first time you follow it, you stick to the steps exactly, but over time, you start tweaking and adding more spices here, substituting ingredients there, whatever you want to do to suit your tastes. The recipe doesn't need to be perfect because you're making it work for you. This mindset applies beyond business. Productivity systems, for example, work well for some people but may need adjustments for others. Time blocking might be great in theory, but if your schedule is unpredictable, you'll need to tweak the system to make it more effective. Ultimately, embracing the flaws of a model means using it as a starting point, not a rigid path. By accepting its limitations, you stay adaptable to the open change, allowing you to create solutions that better fit your needs. Models aren't meant to solve every problem. They're tools to guide you on your journey, and the value lies in how you use them to move forward. How to use models without being trapped by them. Using models effectively is all about striking a balance. Models are incredible tools. They help us simplify complex ideas, give us direction, and provide structure when we're feeling overwhelmed. But the key to using them without becoming trapped lies in approaching them with flexibility and curiosity, rather than blind adherence. It's about understanding that a model is a starting point, not the final answer, and learning to adapt to it to your unique circumstances. The first step to using a model without being trapped by it is viewing it as a guide, not a rule book. Models aren't sacred texts. They're frameworks built on assumptions, and those assumptions might not always apply to your situation. By starting the mindset that the model is here to assist, not dictate, you free yourself from the pressure of trying to follow it perfectly. Instead, you allow it to inspire ideas and productivity while staying open to adjustments along the way. One of the most important aspects of using a model effectively is to understand its limitations. No model can account for every variable, and real life is rarely as neat and predictable as a framework as we might suggest. Take a moment to reflect on the context in which this model was created. Who is it designed for? What assumptions is it making for the problem it's trying to solve? For example, many productivity systems like time blocking assume predictable schedules and uninterrupted work hours. If your reality involves frequent disruptions or an unpredictable routine, the rigid application of a system could lead to frustration rather than productivity. Recognizing these gaps allows you to adjust your model to fit your own needs. Flexibility is the key when working with models. If something about the framework doesn't feel right or it's not producing the desired results, don't hesitate to tweak it. Adapt it to your situation rather than forcing yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. This approach not only makes the model more useful, but also ensures that it aligns with your goals and the realities of your life. Another way to avoid being trapped by a model is to think of them as tools in a larger toolkit. Sometimes a single model won't be enough to address the full scope of a problem. In these cases, combining elements from different models or creating your own hybrid approach can be incredibly effective. Borrow the parts that resonate with you, leave behind what doesn't, and craft something uniquely suited to your needs. This creative blend ensures that the models you use evolve alongside you, rather than conflicting to a static framework. And obviously, finally, trust your intuition. While models can provide structure and clarity, they're not omniscient. You know your situation, your goals, and your values better than any framework ever could. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts and adjust accordingly. Sometimes stepping away from a model or breaking the rules can lead to the most innovative and effective solutions. Ultimately, the best way to use a model is without being trapped by it is to stay curious and adaptable. Treat models as starting points, not destinations. Question their assumptions, modify them to suit your needs, and remain open to change as circumstances evolve. By approaching models with this mindset, you can harness their power without becoming confined by their limitations, using them to create a path that's uniquely your own. Finding freedom in imperfection. There's a liberating truth in realizing that perfection isn't necessary for success. This is especially true when using models, systems, or frameworks. Embracing imperfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means recognizing that nothing needs to be flawless to be effective. In fact, imperfection often sparks growth, helping us adapt and create solutions that work uniquely around us. For a long time, I wanted the systems I relied on to work perfectly. If a model didn't deliver the results I expected, I felt frustrated and I blamed myself for this system. But I learned that expecting perfection was holding me back. Instead of focusing on what wasn't working, I started to appreciate the parts that were useful and adjusted the rest to fit my needs. Imperfection makes models adaptable. When you stop demanding that a framework be flawless, you open yourself up to creativity and customization. You start seeing models as flexible tools rather than rigid rules. This shift allows you to use models as they were intended, a guide to inspire action without feeling confined by their limitations. Letting go of perfection removes unnecessary stress. Models don't need to provide all the answers, they just need to get you moving in the right direction. By embracing their imperfections, you give yourself permission to experiment and make adjustments. This freedom often leads to unexpected breakthroughs, allowing you to combine ideas or solve challenges in the way original models didn't account for. Ultimately, finding freedom in imperfection is about embracing the reality of life. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's always evolving. Success doesn't come from sticking to rigid systems, but from using them in a way that works for you. When you let go of what you need for a perfect solution, you unlock creativity, empowerment, and the ability to make every framework your own. Imperfection isn't a weakness, it's a chance to craft something uniquely yours. Personal challenge. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or frustrated because something isn't working the way you thought it would, I guess here's my challenge to you. Let go of the need for imperfection. Use the models as tools, not rules. Be willing to adapt, experiment, and embrace the messiness of life. You gotta remember, it's okay if your map isn't perfect. The journey is where the real magic happens.